What do drummers name their daughters?
I don't know.
Anna 1, Anna 2, let's do it.
Hello, I'm Molly Carter and I'm here today with Jez Smith, a biology teacher at an academy in Nottingham.
Hey guys, how we doing?
We're in the zoo room, or the reptile room of his home for this revision session, and today we're going to cover the classification of living organisms. We're going to begin with the Linnaean system of classification, which is a basic model for the classification of species. This allows the subdivision of living organisms into smaller and more specialised groups. So the first division is into one of the 5 kingdoms of classification, and we've got a variety of creatures around us now. Would you be able to give an example for each kingdom?
Well, at the moment we all fit into the one kingdom as the people of interest in here because we're part of the Animalia kingdom, the animals. Next door to them we have the plants, so we've got 2 kingdoms colliding here because we've got the animals and then the plants that, for example, the iguanas will feed on.
And notice we probably don't have any fungi in here. I know I found some this morning in the fridge on my blueberries. The protists and, I'm going to say this wrong, prokaryotes? Prokaryotes. I was reading through this and I had no idea what they were.
Well, remember, prokaryotes are the very basic, so they're almost like the prototypes. They're very similar. So that's the way that we learn about it in Nottingham, is that we have prokaryotypes, which are the basic ones, and then us, that are the eukaryotypes. So you are a eukaryotype.
Okay, so we're then able to divide these kingdoms further by ranking them according to phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. So if we take the chameleon as an example, Neo, would we be able to go through each of these divisions in relation to him?
We certainly can, and it's quite a long story for him. When you're looking at the classification system, it's worth remembering it's a bit like an address. So just like you would have a postal address that we'd send fan mail to, we have a postal address within classification, and it really starts in reverse. So the first stop is planet Earth. So for Neo, starting with his kingdom, he's part of Animalia. We then break that down and he joins the phylum of Chordata because he has a spinal cord. His class is Reptilia, order Squamata, suborder Iguania. He then comes in of the family of Chameleonidae, which then brings us through to his family, to his genus, which is Cameleo, and his species is Cameleo calypterus.
That's a lot of long words.
It's a complicated system, but it's how we find him in the great mass of 5.9 million species on the planet. It's very clever.
You can use the linguistic kids prefer candy over fresh green salad to remember the Linnaean system of classifying organisms.
Or if you want to be a little bit more British, you can have King Philip, come on for God's sake.
I was going to say, can we make one up? But that's...
If you ask your biology teacher, they do know the rude ones out there. They're worth hearing.
Give them an ask and see what you find out.
Exactly.
So the Linnaean system of classification is the basic model for classifying species, but there are also other models. The binomial system names species using Latin and has 2 parts to it, the genus and the species. I did do a search for Neo, and that one, excuse if I say this wrong, is Cameleo chameleon. So it belongs to the genus Cameleo, and the species is chameleon. Why would you say this is an important system of classifying species?
Because we've got 5.9 million living species on the planet. As a biologist, I haven't got time or brain capacity to know every single one of them. So with the classification system, as soon as somebody tells me that they're in Reptilia, I've got a pretty good idea of what I'm going to greet and expect.
Would you say that this system is more advanced than Linnaeus's original ideas?
I think the big thing to realise about classification is that it all started in a very wrong and very empirical way of describing them purely by what we could see in a dead specimen. So it was the days of empire when we'd go out and shoot something and then we'd spend time studying it. With the new system, we're able to use chemical analysis, DNA analysis, we're allowed to work it back up from the proteins they produce. So suddenly we can start classifying by what they're like inside, how they're constructed. And that is so much more accurate and helpful to us. And it's also rather kinder on the animals.
I'm going to move on to the 3-domain system, another classification system. The classification systems themselves have continued to be developed by other scientists, such as Carl Woese, who developed the 3-domain system. So what makes this system different to the other two?
Again, it's about the depth that we can look into to find the closeness of relationship. There's a lot more analysis, there's a lot more quantifying of the data so that we can have a surer bet on similarity or dissimilarity than we could by simple observation or backstopping. So it's really just that much more precise. And of course in science, precision is a big thing to us.
How does this system divide organisms differently to the other two?
Basically, we're looking at the complication or the complexity of organisms, so that we're looking at archaea, which are the primitive bacteria. We often find those in very extreme environments. Then into the bacteria, what we call the true bacteria, which are the microbes, and they far outnumber us on the planet. And then we're into the eukaryota, which are the basic plants, animals, fungi. So we've got a much bigger group. It's a different take on what Linnaeus saw, but it's not so dissimilar in that it's still breaking things down into groups of similar organisms.
I'm sure that a lot of us have heard of family trees. Thousands of them have been using ancestry sites to trace back their own family trees. And evolutionary trees are similar to this in that they're a method used by scientists to represent the relationship between a set of organisms. And how do evolutionary trees work? How are they created?
We now have a massive evolutionary tree worked out, and what it does is it follows the branches, how things branch away from each other, so that we can go into this grouping of organisms, so that as a biologist I know more about the general types of animals and plants that are around us. The big evolutionary trees that we're now seeing are the ones where we're bringing together, almost like a jigsaw, the smaller evolutionary trees have been put together by specialists, and we're starting to paint those into one big tree that we can see. And it's really quite astounding to see one in full size, and what a tiny part of it we actually are.
Yeah, just a tiny little nub on what you showed me before anyway.
Absolutely, and that's a graphic we can share, but it's we are such a speck on a massive planet. It's remarkable that we've achieved what we have.
Yeah, we've made such an impact from just being a tiny dot, really.
And we need to learn how to make a less of an impact.
Yeah, definitely. Evolutionary trees can be created using DNA sequences of different species. This allows scientists to examine the differences at a DNA level, which may have led to evolutionary splits millions of years ago.
And if we look at those splits, it comes up to one of the common questions that I'm always asked. Are the reptiles basically small dinosaurs? Well, the answer is no, they're not, because there was a split that took place millions of years ago, which meant that the reptiles survived the meteor impact with the Earth, but the dinosaurs didn't. If we just look at the tree here, we can see multiple organisms that have been alive over 4 periods of time. But if we look from today, and we trim back all the animals that are no longer surviving, then we can see, right up here on the right hand side, the crocodiles and the alligators have survived. In the middle we can see the lizards and the snakes, so we can actually see how recently they split into 2 different groups. And we can see that we've also kept the turtles. All of the others are simply moments in history. So for a today tree, we would need to massively prune that down, and it would look very small, much smaller.
Yes. So, sadly, that's the end of this episode and the whole of this module covered. Join me and Jez in our next module, which follows from these evolutionary trees and focuses on genetic inheritance. These are the genes that are passed down from family members to us, and how the different combinations of these genes makes us unique. Thank you for joining me in this revision session.
Take it easy.
See you later.